more expeditions. But floor is yours, Devika.
All right, thank you. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so good morning and good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to show you some preliminary results on research that I did in Suriname of February this year on the habitat, natural activity, and ethnocultural use of electric eels in Suriname. So a little bit about myself. I'm currently employed by the Van Gaal Leiden University of Applied Sciences here in the Netherlands as a researcher and lecturer. And before this, I was employed as a lecturer at the Anton University at the Environmental Sciences Department. And one of the important events for me was field trips and conducting field research. And it was also very important for me to teach students basic survival skills while we are there out in this field. Sometimes we have locations that are very remote with minimal resources available and no stores or shops inside. So it is sometimes a challenge to survive and to be able to conduct research. And on the bottom top picture, you can see some students arriving at a remote location and ready to set up camp. And the next few days, we would be spending there doing ecology research on the surrounding environment. And during these expeditions and excursions, I would also explore the aquatic systems in Suriname. And on the bottom left picture, you can see some of my assistants catching a fish. It is actually a weekly electric fish that was caught. And so that was also very interesting for me to do that with students. And while employed at the Van Gaal University, I'm still involved in fish research. So on the bottom right picture, you can see a baby silver eel or a glass eel, which I have just tagged with a silicone tag. And I'm very much interested in the Surinamese river systems and the soundscape ecology of these systems. And particularly how specific species or groups of species use the river system or parts of the river systems to live there and navigate, and how they use the environment, and whether there is a connectivity between the different parts of the rivers, between species, or interactions as well within one part of the river system and other species. And so for the midsection of the river, I wanted to look at the electric eel as focus species. And the electric eel is a member of the electric fish, the South American electric fish. And within this group of electric fish, there are weakly electric fish and the electric eel, which has also weakly electric fish pulses, but also very high electric organ discharges. So the electric eels are the only fish on the earth that can create electricity of about 300 volts and more, and the maximum amount of voltages, or the maximum voltage that was measured in electric eels, is 860 volt. So on the right side of the image, you can see three researchers holding an electric eel. This one was caught at the Central Suriname Nature Reserve around 2010, and this one is about 2 meters long. And you can notice the gloves that they are wearing. So you need high voltage isolating gloves to keep a hold of this electric eel. Otherwise, you will get shocked with the currents that it's producing. And on the left side, you can see a weakly electric fish that is the cousin of the electric eels. They also produce electric currents, but these are usually lower than 2 volts, so you can hold them in your hand without feeling anything, as I'm doing here in the picture. And before we move more into depth on the electric eels and how they explore the environment, it's important to mention that all electric fish have the ability to create electricity, and they do this by their electric organ discharges. That is exactly what it says. So they have an electric organ that discharges the electricity. And the weakly electric fish have this, and the electric eel as well. And there are two large groups of electric fish occurring over the world. So the African ones and the South American ones. And both of these groups have a different pulses and waves in their electricity that they discharge. And some have a wave type of EOD, which is electric organ discharge. I will use this abbreviation onward. So some fish have a wave type EOD where the pulses, well, not the pulses, but the waves are generated one after another. So it's very constant, one wave after another. And in the pulse type EOD, you have a wave and then a pause and then a wave again. And it's typically pulse type when the pause is longer than the duration of the wave itself. And you could somewhat relate it to a heartbeat. And this is important because we are going to need this to understand some of the results. So the electric organ discharges are very species specific, and sometimes there is also a variation within species. So individuals might show a slightly different type of EOD patterns. And if you look at the right side at number D, there we have the electrophorus, which is the electric eel, and that is the only one that can generate high voltages. Here it's mentioned 300 volts, but now we already know that they are capable of much more. And all the other electric fishes, they produce electricity of less than 2 volts. Okay, so let's focus on the electric eel. So this electric eel uses its electric ability to hunt its prey. So it uses these electric shocks to stun its prey and then to devour them afterwards. But they also use it against potential predators. So they create this shock that the predator then experiences and hopefully moves away. On these images, you can see actually that you can visualize an electric eel as a large battery with the plus pole at the head part and the minus pole at the tail part. And they effectively use these poles and their behavior in order to create the most optimum voltage of EODs. So in the images above, you can see a robot caiman, and towards the end, the caiman lights up a lot. So here, the leaping behavior of the electric eel is shown, where the eel is leaping out of the water and making contact with the caiman or the crocodile. And the brighter the lights, the higher the voltage that is created by the animal. And this is, like I said before, the only animal that is, or the only electric fish in South America that is able to create these very high voltages of electricity. So with this interest and background information, I formulated some research questions before I went into the field in Suriname. And these are, in short, do electric eels vary in size and danger to people across different river basins? So you can imagine if you have an animal capable of creating shocks of 300 volts or more, sometimes even 860 volts, and there are people around, could accidents be happening or not? Or isn't it that bad for people present in the same areas where these electric eels occur? How does their habitat vary in electric events and natural soundscapes? So when are they active? How do they secrete, well, not secrete, but how do they discharge, and when do they discharge their electric voltages or the electric shocks? And what about the environmental sound? They are in water, but there are other sounds being made. So how are they navigating in this aquatic environment with other sounds present? When do they use their moderate and high electric capacity over the day? Are they only active during one part of the day, or are they active the whole day long? Are there other patterns visible? That's what we wanted to find out. And also, what is the ethnocultural value of electric eels for local tribal communities? Around places where electric eels occur, there are also tribal communities present. And they have found a way to survive in this environment for hundreds of years. And the electric eel has been there longer. So it was interesting to find out whether there was some interaction between humans in these areas and the electric eels, and whether they are used culturally or not. So I had my questions, and then I went into the field. My field research was funded by the Suriname Conservation Foundation. And I went into the field together with field assistants and students from the Anton University of Suriname. And we visited two areas mainly, the Central Suriname Nature Reserve, which is right here, and the Afanafero area, which is also here on the southwestern part of the country. And so when we went to these areas, of course, we were looking for electric eels, and we found them. So sometimes we found them hanging out at the side of the creek or the river like this. And when we found them, we put some equipment in the water to log information. So we put in a hydrophone, which logs the sound, underwater sound that is being made. We logged the underwater light. And we also use this piece of equipment, which is called the electric organ discharge logger, which is an instrument that logs the electric activity in the water during the day. And so we left this logging equipment in the water for 24 hours. But before we put in this equipment, we also did water quality measurements, as you can see here. And then the loggers were placed. We used simple floaters like PET bottles to keep the hydrophone standing. And we used simple ropes to tie the equipment so we wouldn't lose them if anything strange happened. And this is a simple setup of the logging equipment in the water. And on the left side, you can see that the electric eels were not bothered at all. They still kept swimming around just after we had placed the logging equipment in the water. So that was a very good sign for us. All right, so to give you an overview of where and how we put the loggers. So this is an aerial image of Rallyvallen, so the Central Suriname Nature Reserve, in front of Lolopassi, which is somewhere here. And we had placed a set of loggers here, and also on the other side, close to the, I think it's close to the Anyumara Falls, or the road to Tafelberg. And at Moedervallen, so where we had to walk part in the forest to get here, we also placed loggers. And I used foliage, I eventually started using foliage to cover the part of the equipment that was out of the water. And that was really necessary because it became very hot and overheated. So at some point the loggers didn't log anymore because it was terribly hot, and this foliage helped to keep it just cool enough for the equipment to function for 25 hours. So after we did the logging with the logging of the sound and the electric activity and light underwater, we caught the electric eels using scoop nets, and we did some measurements on them. So we measured the length, the weight. I took morphometric pictures of these electric eels to analyze later. I measured the voltage that they created. So the EODs, the high electric organ discharge voltages. And then we took a fin clip, and the animal was released again in the environment that we caught it. So let's take a look at the results. We caught 22 electric eels in total, 14 in the Central Suriname Nature Reserve and 8 at Afanafero in the quarantine area. The average length of the electric eels that we caught were somewhat the same. So an average of 130.5 centimeters in the Kopename area, so the Central Suriname Nature Reserve, and 125.5 centimeters in the quarantine area. For the EOD measurements, unfortunately, these were not successful in the Central Suriname Nature Reserve part. There were some issues with the oscilloscope that we used to measure the voltages. And I was also figuring out the equipment at that point. So unfortunately, we do not have those, but we do have the measurements for the electric eels in the quarantine area. And there we had measured an average of 112.74 volts. We had a minimum voltage of 83.8 and a maximum of 189, which is fairly low. And I still have to take a look at why these are very low. Are they low because I made a mistake with the equipment, or are they low because of other things going on? We had caught the electric eels in a situation where the water levels in the rivers were very, very, very low, especially in the Afanafero area. A large part of the river had dried out, so something about that might have to do with these low voltages that I measured, and I still have to go look into that. I hope you can hear this sound. This is the result of the electric activity loggers. Can you hear this?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Yes.
great. And now, so you hear a continuous tone, and then at some point, you hear pops. The continuous tone is getting louder. And now you can clearly hear the pops. All right. So remember, I told you the difference between the wave type EODs and the pulse type EODs. Here you can see that there are two different types of EODs. There are two different ones because you hear this continuous tone at one point, which transfers into a popping sound at the other. So I can tell you now that the first tone that you're hearing, which becomes louder, is of another weakly electric fish with a wave type EOD, and that is most probably the Eigenmania, which I have an image here. And the pops that you are hearing is typically from the electric eel, and the electric eel typically creates these pulse type EODs. So I know for sure that I have the electric eel and some other electric fish recordings in the electric loggings. And so what you are hearing here actually is not the actual sound that these animals are making, but the electric activity which was logged, which is then turned into sound, which we are hearing now. And so I had also looked at the electric activity during the day. Here you can see an image of the sound over 25 hours at a location. And when I did the EOD loggers or loggings, I had placed two loggers next to each other. One that was logging the actual electric activity in the water, and one that was amplifying that by 100 times. So in this image, you can see the electric activity. This is once again the electric activity turned into sound that we are seeing in this image, and it's amplified 100 times. So it was, made louder 100 times for us to be able to see it. And the more red you see, the more electric activity there is. And so you can see in this image that during the whole day, so 25 hours long, there was electric activity. You can see the red and the yellow in between. But particularly between 6:30 in the evening until 7 in the morning, you see a lot of red lines, which is a lot of electric activity, most probably of the electric eels. So this also indicates that the electric eels, maybe other electric fish, but the electric eels for sure are active during the whole day, but are more active during the dark hours of the day. And this image is of the same location during the same times, but in this case, it's the actual logging. So this one is not amplified. And again, is the electric activity that is transformed into sound for us to analyze. And again, you can see that there is activity during all of the 25 hours that were logged. And specifically between 8:30 and 7 in the morning is the most activity. And I had mentioned that I had also looked at the underwater sound. So this is some data that we retrieved from the hydrophones. This is the actual sounds that were heard by the hydrophone underwater and then transformed into an image to have an overview of the sounds in the water. I still have to go through all of the files to find interesting sound events, but I have some examples here. For instance, okay, I have to make it louder. Right here. So that's one type of sound that I recorded. That could be a fish. And that could be an insect or something else. So you can see that there are some types of sound that are almost always present, and others, well, they vary during the day. All right. I had also looked at the ethnocultural value of the electric eels, and for this we did interviews with local communities. So we interviewed the people of Witagrong and Kaimanston, close to the Ralifale area or the Central Suriname Nature Reserve. And we also interviewed the indigenous communities of Apura Washabo section and Sand Landing. And it turns out that electric eels are used by both communities as food or bait, and is used by both communities traditionally. So to give one example of how they're used traditionally, in the Maroon communities, electric eels are used in cultural baths. So an animal is caught and put in a basin with water and spices and herbs, and people use that to take baths for a couple of weeks. And that is done to prepare for war or to become physically stronger. We also found that people living in these areas, so relatively close to where the electric eels occur, they use natural substances to repel these animals. So it seems that slicing lemons or limes and tying it around your anklet and then going in the water keeps the electric eels away. And the Maroon community pointed out that the fresh seeds of the cashew fruit are very potent. So what they do is they make an anklet out of the fresh seeds of the cashew fruit and tie it around their ankle, and then go in the water to do whatever it is that they need to do. And the oily substance and probably other chemicals that are excreted from the seeds at that point are not pleasant for the electric eels, so they just stay away. And then to come back to the first questions, do electric eels vary in size and danger to people across the different river basins? We had interviewed people and asked them whether they had encounters with electric eels, and some of them had. We interviewed at least one person we know of that had an encounter with an electric eel and was then or develop a heart arrhythmia, which is irregularities in heart rates. And I think in this case, it was specifically larger or longer pauses than is healthy in the heart rate. People also reported blackouts and temporary or temporarily partial paralysis. So from these interviews, it seems that electric eels can be dangerous to people, and that it would be beneficial and wise of us to firstly know where they occur, secondly how they live and what they need in their environment, and thirdly repel them if necessary. So this was an overview of the preliminary results of the research that we conducted in February and March. I still have to do the morphometric analysis of the standard pictures that I took from the electric eels. I want to dive more deeply into the aquatic acoustic analysis of sounds, try to identify specific species of fish or other species that are making the sound. And then also look into the EOD data, so the electric activity that was logged, determine the EOD frequencies and patterns, identify other electric fish species. I know that there is at least one weekly electric fish species in the data, but maybe I can find more if I dive into that. And I'm also planning an extended field work in Suriname on electric eels again in August. So that would be, yeah, the next things on my list regarding this research project. That was it. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Devika. Are there any questions? Please raise your hands.
Go back.
And I see Tinder.
Yes.
Yes, Devika, very nice research. Really, I find you very brave grabbing these electric eels under a stone. I would never do that.
Well,
but,
yes, the students are doing a lot of it. I'm also, but the students are also very brave.
But I really like the traditional knowledge that you collected, wearing anklets with cashew fruits and lemons.
Yeah.
These fruits contain very pungent oils.
Mm-hmm.
The skin of a cashew and also lemon, you don't want to eat the skin. So I can understand that this goes in the water and drives away maybe not only electric eels or also other fish. What do you think?
I think it drives away other fish as well. And if you think about it, it's such a simple but elegant solution. I would never have thought about it myself, but it's so logical and so obvious that makes it so beautiful. And I think that, well, I had also talked about Hans about this. I want to look into this. So imagine being the first person to test what works against electric eels. So that would be quite a shock. But also find out, so how potent are these natural repellents? How often are they used? And can we back that up by scientific experiments? So that would be a very interesting step that I would want to look at.
Yeah, and I've never seen this in ethnobotanical papers. And that means that if you don't ask, you don't know.
True.
But I really like it. If you need somebody to help you with writing the paper, don't forget me. I really like it.
Thank you. That's awesome. I will do that. Thank you.
Cool. Are there any more? I see Roel.
Yes.
Hello, good afternoon
Hi.
or morning. It's super nice to see this project going from a proposal in November to actual work now. I had a question. It looks like if you are looking at this one aerial photo you made at Rellevalle, you see that apparently there is quite a large or a high density of these electric eels. It also seems they are quite, I don't know if that's true, but quite generalistic. I've seen them in different water bodies in Suriname. How do you explain there is only very little human-wildlife conflict with these eels if they are everywhere, basically?
Well, I don't know for sure if they are everywhere. I do know that they would like to avoid humans if possible, and that humans try to avoid them as well. So in the areas that we have been to, the local people always know where they should expect electric eels, so they're careful with that. And the electric eels as well. So when we went into the water sometimes with an electric fish finder to look for them, and we would come close to one, it would naturally move away. So if we are not startling them, I think that they are moving away by their own. So I think that the encounters that we have registered or are happening are by accident. So both of those species don't want to interact with each other in that way, I think.
Right,
And they like
that's good to know.
specific just to finish the answer, they like a specific type of microhabitat. So they occur in the rivers, but they really like these rapids, not too close to the rapids, so where it's a little more less relaxed, so not a very strong flow, but close to the rocks and sometimes with sandy bottoms. So until now, I have always found them close to rapids.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Nicolas.
Yes, Devika, great presentation. I like it.
Thank you.
But one question. For what sickness do they use electric eel? Is it after? Did you ask that? Like,
Yes, so
maybe.
you're asking about the cultural use. So the cultural bath, it's not specifically used for sickness, so it's more of a preparation for war. So I have been told that it is being done since the times of slavery, and when the Maroons would go into the forest and find a space to live, they would do this ritual already to prepare for battle with the colonizers that were coming after them. And it has been kept like that, I think. And people always also say that it's being done to make yourself more powerful. And one person also said that if someone does this ritual, that person can hold an electric eel with its hands. They will get stunned, but not as much as someone else that didn't do the ritual.
Okay.
And in the indigenous communities, it is used culturally as well, but with children to make them strong later on. So they use baby electric eels and put it in a bath with children for of 3 or 4 years for a while and to make them stronger.
Okay.
No indication of remedies, but I have found literature on electric fish during the Egyptian times that I'm not sure what electric fish was used. I think it was one of the electric rays or the other catfish-like electric fish occurring in Africa that was used by the Egyptians to stimulate cell growth. So they would stun people having wounds, and then the wounds would heal quicker with these shocks.
No, I was thinking maybe they use it to cure a stroke, for example, like if you know. But, okay.
No, not in the groups that I have interviewed, but that would be interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Welcome.
Michael has a question.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. You mentioned that you interviewed people from the Maroon community, but you didn't specify to which group. I know Relifala is the Quinti living there. So where is the Quinti?
Yeah, it was the two Quinti communities close to Relifalen. So Kaimanstong and Witagron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see no more questions. Have you eaten it yourself, Devika?
Yes, I've tried it a couple of years ago, but it was not nice. So the top part across the back tastes a lot like catfish, but the electric organs, they have this very pungent smell and taste, which I couldn't get rid of. So I think I should use some of the ways that the Maroon communities or the indigenous communities are using to prepare it. So I'm open to trying it again.
Okay, I see Michael has raised again his hand. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I was just wondering if you are, because now it was limited to the Quinti, to the Quintis, but are you going to extend it further to the other Maroon groups? Because it would be interesting to see if they have the same use for the electric eels or if they have additional uses as well.
Yes, yes, you're completely right. I'm interested as well. And for now, the constraint is fund. But I will try to find out if I can get additional funding to do that as well. That would be a complete overview of all the traditional communities living close to areas where electric eels occur. So, yeah, I'm still interested in that. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I think having seen it myself in the field, I think they come to very vulnerable places, but they are not very vulnerable because of their discharge capacities, but also what you say, if they're smelly and pungent to eat, that's probably also true for others. Do you have any reason? What has driven this evolution for these repellents? What are the main predators?
Well, as far as I know, electric eels do not have predators. The occasional jaguar or occasional caiman might get them, but yeah, I don't think that predator is the limit to their growth. I think it's other things, so food availability or something else, because they are pretty much robust. They're opportunistic. They haven't evolved for a long time. So I think they're one of the most perfect species fitting in their environment. And they have the ability of this, electric discharge, which is, yeah, such an advantage compared to other fish and how they need to survive and interact in their environment. So I think for me, at least, they are a super species.
And I think you have a part of the distribution because I think the smallest was 80 or 90 centimeters.
Yes.
And so
yes.
probably at these spots, they're kind of aggregations of adults, or maybe
Yes.
you're in the season that you have the adults. There may be other seasons, other places where you also get the smaller individuals, and there may be
Yes.
places where there are even larger individuals.
Yes,
So
exactly. I
yeah.
expect to find different lengths during the year because they are mature at 80 centimeters, and the time that we encountered them, that was February. That was close to the short rainy season or just start of the rainy season, and that is exactly the time when they choose to reproduce. So they were just getting ready to reproduce. We're not sure how they do that, but I know that their gonads, so their sexual organs are active during those times.
Yeah.
And it's not surprising that we found a lot of adults because maybe they were socializing and trying to pick out a mate to start reproducing soon.
Yeah, because I think that's the danger to people is, of course, then you need to know the habits and where
Yes.
the dangerous animals are and where they get potentially in touch with people. And I think the local people are maybe the least threatened because they really know
Yes.
what's going on, but also tourists. So sandy beaches along the river, what animals come there and in what season, and what happens if they are getting close to a tourist. But I think that's for follow-up.
Yes. Yes.
So if there are no more questions, I do not see any hands raised. I want to close this first edition, which I very much liked. 4 very different and very good presentations. I welcome everybody to come up with suggestions, maybe to give a presentation next year. We try to organize this every half year. And as said, there are no limitations to anybody. You can come from any country. It should be research to some extent related to biodiversity research and related to Suriname to some extent. So let us know. And thank you very much for being present. And of course, a big thank to the 4 speakers of today. So have a nice day. And those people that go and watch soccer, good luck, of course. I see Nicolas has on his orange shirt already. So
yeah.